All right, students, so this lecture is about sickle cell disease, the genetics of sickle cell disease. We're going to be looking at some pretty interesting stuff. So these are the unit objectives. These are the things that you should be able to do after this unit is over. And this is a continuation of that. So what is sickle cell disease? You may have heard of it. And what it does is cause your red blood cells to form these kind of odd shapes. But we're going to answer, this question, what is sickle cell disease? How does the DNA contain the instructions for a protein? So, what does DNA have to do with sickle cell disease? How are these genetic diseases inherited? And then finally, how are they treated? Well, a genetic disease is caused by a mutation in the genetic information of an individual, and that information, that gene, can be passed on from one generation to the next. But not all diseases are genetic diseases. Colds, the flu, COVID, those things are diseases that don't really have a genetic component to it, but things like cystic fibrosis, Huntington's disease, those are genetic diseases. And sickle cell itself is a genetic disease that can, of course, be passed on from one generation to the next. And if we look at this, we see the shaded person is unaffected, and the non-shaded person is affected. So an affected person can have two children, one of which is affected. This person can have marry someone who's unaffected and then pass it on. And so this is a type of pedigree that kind of shows the how the gene is passed from one generation to the next. So what is a gene? If these diseases are caused by genes, what is a gene? A gene is a segment of DNA that contains instructions for the production of a protein. And I can't stress this enough. Like, a lot of students think that your DNA does a lot of things, actively does a lot of things, and it does more than we'll speak about. But your DNA is really kind of like a book, like an instruction manual. And in reality, if you buy a desk from Walmart and you put all the pieces out on the floor and you put the instruction manual on that pile of stuff, the instruction manual won't build the desk. Now, is the instruction manual important? Yeah, because it tells you what pieces go first. It tells you what pieces go second and third. And that's really all your DNA does, is it tells you, hey, if you want to build this protein, then the instructions say to put this amino acid first, this amino acid second, this amino acid third. And if you put those amino acids in the same order every time, you'll get the same protein because it will have a specific shape. So this is important too. The shape of a protein determines its function. If a protein has a different shape, then it will not function properly. Like a key. If a key has a different shape, it won't open the lock anymore. It may open a different lock, but it won't open the lock that it did before. So it will have some different function. There are large sections of our DNA that do not produce proteins. And we used to call that non-coding DNA. But those non-coding portions of DNA we found are actually pretty important in the homeostasis of our body and in the things that we do. But we're going to focus on the genes. And a gene builds a protein. Okay, so in order to be inheritable, a trait has to be encoded in the genes of our DNA, right? Because that's the only thing we pass on to our offspring is a set of DNA. And it's accomplished by sexual reproduction. And if that gene is in the egg cell or the sperm cell of a female, and that egg or sperm is the one that's doing the fertilization, then that genetic disease will be inherited. Well, in sickle cell disease, also called sickle cell anemia, there's a single change in a gene, one letter, right? And it causes the hemoglobin protein in the red blood cells to form incorrectly, and it causes red blood cells to have these weird shapes, often these kind of sickle-shaped cells here, and it prevents transporting oxygen to the tissues of the body, which is dangerous. Well, the mutated hemoglobin protein causes those sickle cell shape, and it can cause like clots in the vessels for individuals. So which of the following is the basic unit of inheritance? You should know that. A genetic disease has which of the following characteristics, and you should know that one too. Well, now that we know that hemoglobin, which is a protein, is made by the instructions found on a gene, right, which is our DNA. Well, if you change those instructions on DNA a little bit, you can change the hemoglobin and it will form a different shape, right? And we said that if you change its shape, then you change its function. And so if hemoglobin isn't functioning properly, you can have sickle cell disease. Well, how does hemoglobin work anyway? Well, hemoglobin is a protein. It's actually a complex protein made of 4 different little proteins. And in this hemoglobin, what you have are these heme groups, here, here, and here. And these heme groups will attach to, they have iron on there, and oxygen will bind to the iron. Well, a red blood cell that we also call erythrocytes are responsible for gas exchange in our bodies. Each red blood cell, about 250 million hemoglobin molecules, and red blood cells are a unique form of cell in that the mature red blood cell does not contain a nucleus. So mature red blood cells don't have DNA, they just have the things that they need. And it has like this donut shape to it. Well, when you breathe air in into your lungs, those tubes that the air goes into divide into these smaller passageway until they reach this little place called alveoli. So air comes in through the bronchioles. These bronchioles branch into these smaller and smaller tubes until you reach these little bubble-looking things called alveoli. Well, it's in these alveoli that the respiratory system exchanges gases. Blood that's coming back from your body. So blood that's coming back from your body has very low oxygen content, almost none actually. And it has a very high carbon dioxide content because the blood has picked up carbon dioxide from your cells. It's a waste product of cellular respiration. Well, that means that the air inside is high in oxygen, low in carbon dioxide. And so those gases will move across because of diffusion. And so you trade gases across. Well, as this blood moves across the alveoli, it will pick up the oxygen from inside. It will dump its carbon dioxide into the alveoli and then continue back to the body. So low oxygen, high carbon dioxide, low carbon dioxide. We can see that same kind of process here. We can see gas exchange in your lungs and then gas exchange in your body cells too. Well, hemoglobin picks up oxygen and it forms this thing called oxyhemoglobin. So hemoglobin plus oxygen is oxyhemoglobin. Carbon dioxide is transported within the interior red blood cells as carbonic acid. And I think we saw that here. So we see some carbonic, well, maybe I'll zoom this in. So this is a carbonic acid form here that is carried by your red blood cell, and it can release carbon dioxide, form water, and carbon dioxide will then enter into your lungs so that you can exhale it. Well, how does sickle cell disease impact the body? The circulatory system shown here is responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to all your body. The heart pumps blood through your vessels. I think most of you probably understand that concept. Altered hemoglobin kind of becomes sticky because it's different and it clumps together, causing that sickle shape. And in the capillaries, these little small vessels here, those red blood cells can block capillaries, restrict blood flow to organs and tissues. And if you've ever laid on your arm, put your head down on a desk and then you kind of wake up and your arm feels numb, that you can have that feeling. When the capillaries surrounding the alveoli become blocked, it can cause a condition known as acute chest syndrome, like shortness of breath, high fever. It reduces the amount of oxygen, and so you end up with anemia, this low oxygen content in the body. And it requires immediate medical attention too. And this kind of shows how sickle cells can block up the capillary network in your alveoli there. Well, the immune system and lymphatic systems are responsible for protecting the body from foreign pathogens. It's another system of tubes in your body, but these tubes carry lymph, and individuals with sickle cell are more prone to infections because of the low oxygen content and disease state of the body. And that is it. And so we'll continue in Module 9 our conversation with sickle cell disease.